Chosen one. Are you tired of watching younger people walk into the very blessings you've been praying for your entire life? Are you exhausted from feeling like God's promise to you got lost in the mail 70 years ago? Are you ready to discover why everything you've been waiting for has been delayed until this moment? Stop. Right there. What I'm about to tell you will shatter every lie you've believed about divine timing and your so-called golden years. Chosen ones. These are not just days on a calendar. They are checkpoints in eternity. September 19th, 20th, and 21st are about to become the most crucial 72 hours of your entire existence. And if you scroll past this message, you will destroy what the Almighty has already wrapped with your name on it. Picture this. You're standing before 3 doors in a dark corridor. The first 2 doors will only open if you step forward with trembling faith. But the third door vanishes forever if you hesitate even 1 second. That's where you are right now. At the threshold. At the crossroads. At the moment where heaven either crowns you or passes your blessing to someone else who was paying attention. Here's the shocking truth they don't want you to know. The same God who parted the Red Sea for Moses at 80 years old, who opened Sarah's womb at 90, who called Samuel in the temple as a child. He's been saving his most explosive miracles for seniors who refuse to believe their season has passed. But ignoring these 3 days, September 19th, 20th, and 21st, will erase blessings God has already placed in your path. Not delay them, erase them permanently. Before we journey deeper into this mystery together, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. If your spirit is already stirring, if something deep in your chest just whispered, "This is for me," type, I hear you in the comments right now. Because heaven is listening, angels are taking attendance, and God is about to separate those who were sleeping from those who were watching. By the end of this message, you'll understand why these 3 days are more dangerous to ignore than every storm you've survived your whole life. You'll discover why your age isn't your limitation, it's your weapon. And you'll finally comprehend why everything you've endured was preparation for what's about to unfold in the next 72 hours. The countdown has already begun. The spiritual atmosphere is shifting. And somewhere in the realm of the eternal, your name is being called. Will you answer? How many Sunday mornings have you sat in that same pew, surrounded by families with their children and grandchildren, while you check your phone hoping for just one text message that never comes? How many times have you dialed your adult children's numbers only to hang up before it rings because you don't want to be a burden? How many nights have you lain awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if God has placed you on some cosmic waiting list that he forgot about decades ago? Listen to me, dear one. I see you there. I see you in that empty house where the silence is so thick you can taste it. I see you at that kitchen table, pushing food around your plate because eating alone has stolen even the simple pleasure of a meal. I see you checking your mailbox for something, anything that proves the world remembers you exist. You've been faithful for 70, 80, maybe 90 years. You've tithed when your social security check barely covered groceries. You've prayed through every crisis, every diagnosis, every loss. You've buried friends, buried dreams, and sometimes wondered if you've buried hope itself. And still, you keep believing. Still, you keep trusting. Still, you keep waiting for God to show up in a way that feels real, tangible, unmistakable. But here's what's breaking your heart, isn't it? The waiting. The endless, suffocating waiting. It feels like walking through a house where every light switch is broken. You flip the switch expecting illumination, but nothing turns on. You try another room, another switch, and still darkness. You've been flipping switches for decades, haven't you? Praying for your prodigal son to come home, praying for your health to stabilize, praying for financial relief, praying for just one sign that your life mattered, that your sacrifices weren't in vain. And the cruelest part, you watch other people's prayers get answered in real time. You see their miraculous recoveries, their financial breakthroughs, their family reconciliations posted all over social media. Meanwhile, you're still waiting for crumbs from heaven's table. The prophet Habakkuk knew this agony. He cried out, "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen?" Habakkuk 1-2. That's your prayer too, isn't it? How long, Lord? How much longer must I wait? How many more birthdays must pass in solitude? How many more doctor's appointments must I face alone? You've started having conversations with yourself that terrify you. Maybe I misunderstood my calling. Maybe I'm not as special as I thought. Maybe God's blessings are for younger people with more energy, more time, more relevance. Stop right there. That voice whispering doubt into your weary soul, that's not the voice of truth. That's the voice of the enemy who knows exactly what you're carrying and is desperate to convince you to give up 3 days before your breakthrough arrives. You see, beloved, what if those dark halls you've been walking through weren't punishment? What if they weren't evidence of God's forgetfulness? What if every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every silent night was actually training? Training for the doors about to burst open on September 19th, 20th and 21st. Isaiah 40-31 promises, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Notice it doesn't say those who are young or those who are perfect. It says those who hope, those who wait, those who endure. That's you, chosen one. You are the one who hoped when hoping hurt. You are the one who waited when waiting felt like dying. You are the one who believed when believing made no logical sense. But here's the shocking truth that will change everything. Your greatest seasons aren't behind you. They're 3 days away. The same God who called Abraham at 75 to father nations, who used Moses at 80 to split seas, who opened Sarah's womb at 90 to birth miracles. He's been saving his most explosive demonstrations of power for seniors who've learned that his timing isn't early and it's never late. It's always precisely perfect. Every tear you've cried in secret has been collected in heaven's bottles. Every prayer you've whispered in the dark has been recorded in eternal archives. Every night you've felt forgotten has actually been noticed by the one who never sleeps, never slumbers, never stops working on your behalf. Your loneliness wasn't abandonment. It was preparation for a blessing so personal, so intimate, so perfectly designed for you, that it required decades of character development to handle it. Your waiting wasn't waste. It was qualification for an assignment that only someone with your exact story, your exact scars, your exact faithfulness could fulfill. The phone that doesn't ring? It's about to ring with opportunities you never imagined. The empty mailbox? It's about to overflow with confirmations of your worth. The silent house? It's about to echo with laughter you thought you'd never hear again, but only if you don't give up 3 days before the miracle manifests. If you've been waiting for decades for God to remember your name, if you've been faithful through seasons that would have broken weaker souls, if you're still here despite every reason to quit, type, "I'm still here" in the comments right now. Because your endurance hasn't gone unnoticed, your faithfulness hasn't been forgotten, and your breakthrough hasn't been cancelled, it's been scheduled. The question that will determine everything is this: will you hold on for 3 more days, or will you surrender your blessing to someone else who was watching when you were weeping? Let me tell you something that's going to cut straight to your soul, chosen one. The danger ahead isn't what you think it, island. You're sitting there worried about your health, your finances, your family drama. But the real catastrophe lurking in the shadows is far more sinister than any earthly concern. The danger is not that you'll collapse tomorrow. The danger is that you'll keep living half alive, missing the very inheritance heaven already wrote in your name. Think about this for a moment. How many times in your 70, 80, 90 years on this earth have you felt that stirring in your chest? That whisper that said something's about to happen? How many times did you ignore it, dismiss it, tell yourself you were just being emotional? And how many times did you watch, months later, as someone else walked into the very breakthrough you felt coming, but didn't pursue? That wasn't coincidence, that was consequence. You see, most people think ignoring spiritual promptings is harmless. They think it's like missing a phone call, inconvenient, but you can always call back later. But that's not how heaven operates. God doesn't send multiple invitations to the same banquet. When He whispers your name at a specific moment, in a specific season, for a specific purpose, that moment carries a weight that cannot be recreated. It's like walking past the last train before winter and the station doors slam shut forever. The tracks don't disappear, the station still stands. But that particular train, with that particular destination, carrying that particular blessing with your name carved into the seat, it's gone. And spiritual winter settles over your life like a blanket of regret. Jesus knew this truth when He told the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. But notice what the text doesn't say. It doesn't say the foolish virgins were evil. It doesn't say they didn't believe. It doesn't say they didn't want to attend the wedding. They simply weren't prepared when the moment arrived. And when they realized their mistake, when they scrambled to get oil for their lamps, when they ran to catch up with the procession, the door was already shut. "Lord, Lord, open to us," they cried. But the bridegroom answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." Not because they were strangers, but because they missed their moment of recognition. Dear soul, September 19th, 20th, and 21st are your oil check. These aren't arbitrary dates thrown at you like spiritual lottery numbers. These are divine checkpoints where heaven examines whether you're carrying the oil of readiness, the oil of expectation, the oil of holy desperation for what God wants to pour into your life. But here's what breaks my heart. I can see you right now, sitting there, part of you believing and part of you skeptical, part of you stirring with hope and part of you thinking, "I'm too old for this kind of breakthrough." God's big moves are for younger people. That voice whispering doubt, that's not wisdom. That's the voice of the foolish virgins, convincing themselves they have more time. Abraham was 99 when God gave him the promise of Isaac. 99. When most men are planning their funeral arrangements, Abraham was planning a nursery. Moses was 80 when God called him from a burning bush to lead 2 million people out of bondage. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she finally laid eyes on the Messiah she'd been waiting for her entire life. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. Every year you've survived, every storm you've weathered, every disappointment you've endured has been building something inside you that younger generations simply cannot carry. Endurance, wisdom, the kind of faith that's been tested in fires and emerged as gold. But if you ignore these 3 days, if you treat them like just another weekend on your calendar, you're essentially telling heaven, "I'm not ready. I don't want what you're offering. Give my blessing to someone who's paying attention." And make no mistake, beloved, there are others watching. Others who felt the same stirring you feel right now. Others who understand that when God marks specific dates, specific seasons, specific moments, those who respond inherit what those who ignore forfeit. This isn't a game. This isn't spiritual entertainment. This is divine logistics. Heaven operates on schedules, seasons, and appointed times. Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Not every season, not any time. A season, a time, specific, appointed, non-negotiable. When you miss God's timing, you don't just miss an opportunity, you miss an entire trajectory. You miss the divine dominoes that were set up to fall in perfect sequence, creating a pathway to your breakthrough that might not come again for years, if ever. The 5 foolish virgins didn't just miss a wedding. They missed the celebration they'd been preparing for their entire lives. They missed the moment their waiting transformed into wonder. They missed the door that led from expectation to experience. Right now, there's a door marked with your name. A door that leads to everything you've been believing for, praying for, crying for in the secret places of your heart. But that door has a timer on it. September 19th, the timer starts. September 20th, it's counting down. September 21st, it locks. The question that will haunt you for the rest of your days is this: when that door closes, will you be on the inside looking out with gratitude, or on the outside looking in with regret? Because once the bridegroom says, "I do not know you," no amount of knocking, crying, or pleading can reopen what heaven has sealed shut. But what if? Just what if you're reading these words right now? Because God is giving you one final wake-up call before the most important 72 hours of your spiritual life begin. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What's happening September 19th through 21st isn't just another spiritual moment you can bookmark for later. This is warfare. And right now, while you're sitting there thinking you have time to decide, the enemy is already positioning his forces to steal what God has been preparing for you since before you took your first breath. You want to know why these exact dates? Because numbers in God's kingdom aren't random, they're weapons. And heaven just handed you a spiritual arsenal that most believers will completely ignore. September 19th carries the weight of divine judgment mixed with unfathomable mercy. The number 19 inches scripture represents the collision between what you deserve and what God chooses to give you instead. It's the number that whispers, "Today I settle accounts, but not the way you think." On this day, God isn't looking at your failures. He's looking at your faithfulness through decades of disappointment, and He's about to balance the books in your favor. But here's what will destroy you. If you treat September 19th like just another Thursday, you'll miss the courtroom of heaven opening in your favor. You'll sleep through your own vindication. September 20th is where divine waiting ends. For 20 years, 40 years, maybe 60 years, you've been asking God, when? The number 20 inches biblical numerology represents the completion of waiting, the moment when heaven stops testing and starts delivering. It's the number that says, enough, the preparation is finished. Now comes the manifestation. But let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many times has God tried to end your waiting, only to find you weren't paying attention? How many divine appointments have you missed because you were distracted by the noise of ordinary life? September 21st is the number of complete breakthrough. 21 represents the perfection of spiritual completion, when every cycle closes and every promise opens. It's the number that transforms impossible into inevitable. But here's the terrifying truth. If you're not positioned correctly on the 19th and 20th, the 21st becomes just another date you'll look back on with regret. It's like 3 thunderclaps rolling across the sky, each one closer, louder, more dangerous to ignore. The first thunderclap warns you, the second thunderclap positions you, the third thunderclap changes everything. But most people, they hear the thunder and go back inside, never realizing they just missed the rain they've been praying for their entire lives. Do you remember Israel at Jericho? 7 days of walking in circles, following instructions that made no earthly sense. The walls looked exactly the same on day 6 as they did on day 1. Nothing had changed. Nothing had moved. Can you imagine the doubt creeping in? Are we just walking in circles? Has God forgotten us? Maybe this strategy isn't going to work. But Joshua knew something they didn't understand yet. God's timing is never early, and it's never late. It's always precisely perfect. On the 7th day, they didn't just march. They shouted. And those walls didn't gradually crumble, they collapsed in one supernatural moment. Generations of impossibility destroyed in seconds, because someone refused to treat God's timing as a suggestion. That's you right now. You've been walking around your Jericho for decades, that financial curse that's haunted your family tree, that health condition that doctors can't explain, that loneliness that makes you question if God even sees you. September 19th, 20th, and 21st are your 7th day. But will you shout or will you shrug? Think about Daniel. 21 days of prayer that shook the very foundations of heaven and hell. Daniel 10:12 tells us that from the first day, Daniel set his heart to understand. His words were heard in heaven. But it took 21 days for the answer to break through spiritual warfare and reach him. 21 days of fighting invisible battles for visible breakthrough. You've been in your own 21-day battle, haven't you? Maybe not days, maybe decades, but the same principle applies. Every prayer you've whispered in the dark, every tear you've cried in secret, every moment you've chosen faith over fear has been building toward these 3 days. The enemy has been fighting to delay your answer, but his time is up. And Abraham? Genesis tells us he waited until he was 100 years old before Isaac was born. 100 years old. The world would have written him off as finished, past his prime, too old for miracles. But God was saving his most impossible miracle for Abraham's most impossible season. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Your years aren't counting down, they're counting up to the moment when God proves that he specializes in late-night miracles. But here's what's breaking my heart right now. Some of you are sitting there thinking, this sounds too good to be true. I've been disappointed too many times. I can't handle another false hope. That's not wisdom speaking, that's trauma. That's the voice of every delay convincing you that God's promises have expiration dates. Let me tell you something that will shock you. Your disappointments weren't detours, they were preparation. Every closed door taught you to trust God's timing over your own. Every delayed answer built the spiritual muscle you'll need to handle what's coming. Every moment you felt forgotten was actually God protecting you from receiving your blessing before you were ready to steward it. These 3 days aren't just about you finally getting what you've been asking for. They're about God proving to heaven, earth, and hell that he never forgets his faithful ones. They're about your story becoming the testimony that causes other people to believe again. If you're ready to claim these dates as yours, if you're ready to stop treating God's timing as optional, declare in the comments right now, I won't miss my door, because heaven is watching. Angels are taking notes, and what you declare today determines what you walk through tomorrow. But knowing these dates matter isn't enough. Understanding the numbers isn't enough. Even believing isn't enough. Because what separates those who receive from those who remain empty-handed isn't faith, it's positioning. You felt it, didn't you? That stirring in your chest when I mentioned September 19th, 20th, and 21st. But now something else is creeping in. Something darker. Something that's been your constant companion for 70, 80, maybe 90 years. Fear. Not the fear of dying, chosen one. You've made peace with that long ago. This is something far more terrifying. It's the fear of living, the fear of hoping, the fear of believing that at your age, God might actually be calling your name for something magnificent. Let me ask you something that might cut deep into your soul. How many times have you stood at the edge of possibility, only to step back because the voice in your head whispered, "You're too old for this"? How many dreams have you buried alive because someone convinced you that Medicare recipients don't get miracles? You stand at the riverbank, staff in hand, water raging before you, and fear whispers, "Stay on the shore. It's safer here." You've survived this long by playing it small. Why risk it now? But here's what fear doesn't want you to remember. Moses was 80 years old when he stood at that same riverbank. 80. His knees probably creaked when he knelt. His hands probably shook when he held that staff. His voice probably quavered when he cried out to the Almighty. But when he stepped into the Red Sea, the waters didn't care about his age. They cared about his faith. And you? You've been standing at your own Red Sea for decades, haven't you? staring at the impossibility, measuring the distance, calculating the risk. While behind you, Pharaoh's army of doubt, regret, and what if I fail charges closer every single day. The most dangerous lie you've ever believed is this: that your retirement years are meant for winding down instead of rising up, that your golden years are about managing decline instead of manifesting destiny. That Social Security is God's way of saying, you're done. But what if I told you that everything you've experienced in your 70, 80, 90 years on this earth was boot camp? What if every heartbreak was strength training? What if every loss was preparation? What if every disappointment was God's way of burning away everything that wasn't essential, so that when these 3 days arrived, you'd be pure gold? Listen to me carefully. The enemy has spent decades whispering the same poison in your ear. Your time has passed, your chance is gone, your season is over, and you believed it. You internalized it. You made peace with mediocrity, because someone convinced you that extraordinary was for other people, younger people, stronger people, people who hadn't made as many mistakes. But Deuteronomy 34:7 declares something that should shake you to your core. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. 120, and Scripture says his strength was not gone. His vision was crystal clear. His passion was burning bright. The God who kept Moses strong at 120 is the same God who's been preserving you for this moment. Every doctor's visit where they said, "I can't believe you're still this sharp." Every morning you woke up when you thought you wouldn't. Every day you found strength you didn't know you had. That wasn't luck. That was divine preservation. You think you're too tired to answer God's call. Gideon was hiding in a wine press when the angel called him a mighty warrior. You think you're too broken. David was an adulterer and a murderer when God called him a man after his own heart. You think you're too ordinary. Mary was a teenage girl from nowhere when heaven chose her to birth the Savior of the world. But here's where the wrestling gets real. Here's where your soul starts to fight against itself. Because deep down, in that sacred chamber of your heart where only truth can echo, you know I'm right. You know that the restlessness you've felt for years isn't arthritis, it's anticipation. You know that the sleepless nights aren't just insomnia, they're intercession. You know that the dreams that wake you at 3 a.m. aren't random, they're downloads from heaven. And that terrifies you, because if you admit that God isn't done with you, then you have to admit you've been playing small. If you acknowledge that these 3 days matter, then you have to face the possibility that you've been ignoring His voice for decades. If you step forward in faith, you risk everything you've built in comfort and safety. But what if the very thing you're afraid of losing is the thing that's been keeping you from living? Joshua 1-9 thunders across the centuries with a command that has your name written all over it. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. God didn't say be strong and courageous if you're young. He didn't say be brave if you have energy. He said be strong and courageous, because He knew that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's faith in action, despite the fear. Fear isn't the proof you're too late, chosen one. Fear is the proof you're standing at the right door. The very intensity of your terror is evidence of the magnitude of what's waiting on the other side. Hell doesn't waste its best weapons on empty vessels. The enemy doesn't mobilize his fiercest opposition against people who pose no threat. So the question that will determine your eternal legacy is this: will you let fear keep you on the shore while your miracle waits in the water? Or will you finally understand that the trembling in your hands isn't weakness, it's the anticipation of touching the divine? Because September 19th, 20th, and 21st are rushing toward you like a freight train, and heaven is holding its breath to see which version of you shows up. Dear chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will explain why your entire life has been leading to these 3 days. Why every tear you've cried, every prayer you've whispered in the dark, Every moment you felt forgotten by God, it was all preparation for September 19th, 20th, and 21st. But first, let me ask you something that will cut straight to your heart. How many nights have you lain awake wondering if your children will repeat the same mistakes that haunted your family for generations? How many times have you watched your grandchildren struggle and thought, God, when will this cycle finally break? The answer is now. In 72 hours. You see, what awaits you on the other side of obedience isn't just personal breakthrough, it's generational transformation. Joel 2:25 declares, I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. But here's what most preachers won't tell you. God's restoration doesn't just flow backward into your past. It flows forward into bloodlines you'll never even meet. Your yes will echo like a stone thrown into still waters, rippling through children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who haven't even been born yet. That addiction that's been stalking your family tree for 4 generations, it dies with your obedience. That poverty mindset that convinced your ancestors they weren't worthy of abundance, it gets buried in these 3 days. That spirit of fear that made your mother settle for less and your father give up on his dreams, it meets its match in your willingness to step forward when God whispers, move. But here's the terrifying truth. If you ignore these days, those same curses continue. They don't just affect you, they transfer to the next generation with compound interest. Your hesitation becomes their limitation, your fear becomes their ceiling, your maybe next time becomes their never. Think about Moses standing at the Red Sea, 2 million people behind him, certain death in front of him, and God saying, why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to move forward. Exodus 14:15. Moses didn't have a guarantee. He didn't have a blueprint. He just had a choice. Step into the impossible, or watch an entire generation die in the wilderness. That's you right now, standing at your Red Sea moment. But this isn't just about your deliverance, it's about every descendant who will either inherit your breakthrough or your bondage. I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. Your children are watching, not just with their eyes, but with their spirits. They can sense whether you're walking in faith or fear. They can feel whether you believe God still has miracles left for your family, or if you've resigned yourself to this is just how we are. And your grandchildren, they're absorbing your spiritual DNA right now. When they face their own impossible moments 30 years from now, they'll either have the memory of a grandmother who stepped forward when heaven called, or the echo of someone who let fear make the final decision. That depression that's been visiting your family like an unwelcome relative for decades. Your obedience in these 3 days can evict it permanently. That financial struggle that convinced your parents and their parents that people like us don't prosper. Your willingness to trust God's timing can rewrite that narrative forever. But here's where it gets personal, where this hits your everyday reality. What if I told you that your 28-year-old daughter's inability to find love isn't just bad luck? What if it's connected to the generational pattern of broken relationships that started with your grandmother? What if your son's business failures aren't just poor timing, but the echo of a family curse that says, we're not meant to succeed? Your obedience in these 72 hours doesn't just change your bank account or your health report. It rewrites the spiritual constitution of your entire bloodline. When your granddaughter faces her first heartbreak, she'll have supernatural resilience because you said yes. When your grandson starts his business, doors will open that stayed locked for previous generations because you broke the cycle. Listen to me carefully. Galatians 3:13-1-4 promises that Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us, so that the blessing given to Abraham might come to the Gentiles through Christ Jesus. The blessing of Abraham, wealth, health, favor, protection, it's already been purchased for your family. But someone has to activate it. Someone has to step forward and claim it. That someone is you. The enemy knows this. That's why he's been working overtime to convince you that your time has passed, that breakthrough is for younger people, that miracles are for others. Because if you ever fully grasp that your obedience unlocks blessings for generations you'll never meet, you become the most dangerous person on earth to His kingdom. Right now, at this very moment, there's a spiritual ledger in heaven with your family's name on it. Every prayer your ancestors prayed, every tear they shed, every moment they cried out for deliverance, it's all been accumulating interest. And these 3 days are when the compound blessing gets released, but only if you're awake, only if you're watching, only if you understand that this isn't just about you getting your breakthrough, it's about you becoming the breakthrough that future generations will thank God for. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Your family has been wearing ashes for too long. Your bloodline has been mourning what could have been instead of celebrating what's about to be. If you want God's restoration to reach beyond you, if you're ready to be the ancestor your great-great-grandchildren, thank God for comment right now. This ends with me. This begins with me. Because what happens next will determine whether your legacy is limitation or liberation. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Picture yourself standing in your kitchen on the morning of September 22nd. The coffee is brewing. The news is droning in the background. Everything looks exactly the same as it did a week ago. But something has shifted. Something invisible. Something eternal. You see, the universe doesn't announce its verdicts with trumpet blasts and lightning strikes. It whispers them into the fabric of your reality, and only those who were paying attention during September 19th, 20th, and 21st will understand what just happened to their lives. For those who obeyed, who stayed awake during those 3 sacred days, the dominoes have already started falling. Not in chaos, but in perfect divine order. That phone call you've been waiting for suddenly comes. That door you've been pushing against finally swings open. That relationship that seemed frozen in time begins to thaw. It's not coincidence, beloved. It's consequence. The consequence of recognizing when God was testing your spiritual reflexes. But here's what breaks my heart. There are others, dear souls, who thought they could afford to ignore heaven's calendar, who will wake up on September 22nd feeling empty, not broken, not devastated, just hollow. Like something precious slipped through their fingers while they were distracted by the meaningless noise of ordinary life. They'll look in the mirror and see the same face. They'll check their bank account and see the same numbers. They'll kiss their spouse good morning and hear the same voice. Everything appears identical on the surface, but deep inside, where their spirit connects to the eternal, a fire that once burned bright has dimmed to barely glowing embers. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That sacred fire Isaiah wrote about in chapter 6, verse 6. Then one of the seraphims flew unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the altar. That coal, that burning ember of divine purpose, either gets fanned into a roaring flame during these 3 days, or it slowly suffocates under the weight of spiritual neglect. Think about the Israelites at Jericho. For 6 days, they marched around those walls in silence, following Joshua's instructions to the letter. But imagine if on the 7th day, the day God said to shout, half of them decided they were too tired, too embarrassed, too logical to open their mouths and cry out. What would have happened? The walls would have remained standing, the city would have stayed conquered, and those who chose silence would have watched others inherit the victory they forfeited through disobedience. That's exactly what happens when chosen ones ignore God's specific timing. The blessing doesn't disappear, it transfers. It passes to someone else who was spiritually alert enough to recognize the moment. But let me paint you a picture that will haunt you if you choose wrong. It's like survivors walking out of a storm. Some emerge with treasure clutched in their hands, gold coins, precious gems, provisions for the journey ahead. Their eyes are bright, their steps are sure, their hearts are full of gratitude because they knew exactly what to grab when the winds started howling. Others stumble out with nothing but ashes in their palms, Grey dust that was once something valuable, but they were too distracted to protect it when the test came. They'll spend the next months wondering what went wrong, why everyone else seems to be thriving, while they're stuck in the same old patterns, the same old struggles, the same old spiritual desert. Here's the terrifying truth about those 3 days. God doesn't give second chances on divine appointments. When Esther was told for such a time as this, she couldn't reschedule. When Moses stood before the burning bush, he couldn't ask for a rain check. When Mary received the angel's message, she couldn't request a more convenient time to birth the Messiah. Divine timing is sacred timing, and sacred timing doesn't accommodate your comfort, your schedule, or your excuses. Right now, as I speak these words, there are chosen ones listening who feel something stirring in their chest. A recognition, a knowing, a voice whispering, "This is real, this matters. I can't afford to ignore this." That stirring isn't your imagination. That's your spirit recognizing truth when it hears it. But there are others, and this breaks my heart, who are already mentally checking out, already convincing themselves this is just another sermon, another video, another spiritual motivational speech they can ignore without consequence. They're calculating in their minds, what's the worst that could happen if I just go about my normal routine? Dear soul, let me tell you what the worst that could happen looks like. It looks like reaching the end of your life and realizing you spent your final decades sleepwalking through divine appointments. It looks like standing before the throne of judgment and hearing Jesus say, "I knocked, but you were too busy to answer. I called your name, but you pretended not to hear." Matthew 25 tells us about 10 virgins waiting for the bridegroom. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. When the cry went out at midnight, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him," only 5 were ready. The other 5? They missed the moment. And when they finally showed up, the door was already shut. The bridegroom's response still echoes through eternity. "Truly, I tell you, I don't know you." Those aren't harsh words. Those are heartbroken words. The words of a God who prepared a feast, sent out invitations, waited with infinite patience, and watched helplessly as his chosen ones chose distraction over destiny. September 19th, 20th, and 21st are your invitation to the feast. But unlike earthly parties, this one doesn't wait for latecomers. If you don't want to be left with ashes in your palms while others walk away with treasure in their hands, if you refuse to spend your remaining years wondering what might have been, if you're finally ready to stop playing spiritual games and start walking in spiritual authority, type, "I choose treasure" in the comments right now. Because in just a moment, I'm going to reveal exactly what each of these 3 days demands of you, and why what feels like ordinary September afternoons are actually the most dangerous and most promising hours of your entire life. Listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will echo in your spirit long after this message ends. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. These aren't just words. These are divine appointments written in heaven's calendar before your first breath. And right now, as I speak these dates over your life, something is stirring in the spiritual realm. Can you feel it? That trembling in your chest? That's not anxiety, beloved. That's recognition. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. But here's what breaks my heart about God's people. You've become so comfortable with delay that you've forgotten the sound of divine urgency. You've settled into the rhythm of someday, and eventually, when heaven is thundering now over your situation, think about Noah. Genesis 7:16 tells us, "Then the Lord shut him in." The door didn't close gradually. It didn't creak slowly. When God's timing arrived, it slammed shut. And everyone outside, they had their chance. They heard the warning. They saw the preparation. But they thought tomorrow would be the same as today. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. Do you hear that sound? It's getting louder, isn't it? like distant thunder rolling across the plains of your consciousness. That's the sound of divine deadlines approaching. And beloved, deadlines don't negotiate. They don't extend themselves because you weren't paying attention. They don't pause because you were comfortable in your routine. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep into your soul. How many times has God whispered your name in the last year, and you've said, "Not yet, Lord"? How many divine appointments have you postponed because the timing felt inconvenient? How many doors of opportunity have you watched close because you thought you had forever to walk through them? September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. Listen, do you hear those footsteps? They're echoing through the corridors of eternity, getting closer with each tick of the clock. Those are the footsteps of divine destiny marching toward your address. And here's what terrifies me for some of you. You're about to miss the knock because you're too busy convincing yourself you have more time. Jesus said in Revelation 3:20, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." But notice what he didn't say. He didn't promise to keep knocking forever. He didn't guarantee the door would stay available indefinitely. He knocked, he waited, and then he moved on to the next house. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. The sound is deafening now, isn't it? Like church bells ringing in sequence, first one, then two, then three, each one louder than the last, each one marking another moment that will never come again. And somewhere in that sound, your name is being called, not whispered, not suggested, called. But here's the part that should shake you to your core. While you've been waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect feeling, the perfect circumstances, God has been preparing a blessing so specific to your situation that it has your spiritual fingerprints all over it. It was designed for your exact needs, your precise struggles, your particular calling. And if you miss these 3 days, if you let September 19th, 20th, and 21st pass by like ordinary calendar squares, that blessing doesn't wait for you. It doesn't sit on a shelf collecting dust until you're ready. It gets transferred to someone else who was awake when you were sleeping. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. Can you hear that? The sound is changing now. It's not just bells anymore. It's doors. Massive doors with hinges that groan under the weight of destiny. And they're closing, one by one. Slam, slam, slam. Think about the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. And when the bridegroom finally arrived, the door shut. Verse 11 breaks my heart. Later the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you." They had the same invitation. They had the same opportunity. They had the same warning. But they thought they had more time. September 19 is awakening. September 20 is decision. September 21 is sealing. The temperature in the room just changed, didn't it? You can feel the weight of eternity pressing down on this moment, because somewhere in your spirit, you know I'm not making this up. You know this isn't religious theater. You know that what I'm speaking over you right now is the sound of heaven's alarm clock going off over your life. And here's the final truth that will either save you or haunt you. You cannot say you didn't know. Heaven has written it. You have heard it. Now you must act. The bells have rung. The footsteps have echoed. The doors are groaning on their hinges. And in the space between this breath and your next, you must choose whether you're going to step forward into what God has prepared or watch it vanish into the hands of another who was brave enough to answer when their name was called. But there's something else you need to understand about these 3 days that will determine whether you receive the blessing or become a cautionary tale about divine timing. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will save you from the most devastating trap the enemy has ever laid for God's people. Because here's what nobody tells you about breakthrough. The moment you step through those 3 sacred doors of September 19th, 20th, and 21st, Hell doesn't just watch quietly from the sidelines, it mobilizes. The devil has been studying your pattern for decades. He knows exactly when you're most vulnerable, and it's not during the storm, it's right after the victory. Think about it. When did the enemy tempt Jesus? Not during his ministry. Not while he was healing the sick or raising the dead. Matthew 4:2 tells us, Satan came after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, after the breakthrough, after the spiritual high. When Jesus was physically depleted, but spiritually elevated. That's the enemy's signature move. He waits until you've just experienced God's power, then whispers the most dangerous lie ever spoken. Nothing happened. You imagined it. But here's where it gets sinister. The enemy doesn't just whisper doubts, he orchestrates circumstances to make those doubts seem reasonable. Within 72 hours of your September breakthrough, watch what happens. Sudden arguments will erupt from nowhere. Your spouse will pick a fight over something that never bothered them before. Your adult children will call with drama that demands your immediate attention and emotional energy. Unexpected bills will appear in your mailbox like vultures circling fresh meat. That medical test you've been putting off. Suddenly it becomes urgent. The car that's been running fine for months? It breaks down on the highway, leaving you stranded and stressed. These aren't coincidences, dear one. This is spiritual warfare disguised as bad luck. It's like termites in the foundation, unseen, but stealing your house from beneath you. While you're celebrating what God did through those 3 days, the enemy is quietly gnawing away at your confidence, your peace, your ability to stand firm in what you received. Here's what breaks my heart. Most believers fall for this trap every single time. They experience a genuine encounter with the Almighty, feel His presence, receive His promises, then allow a few inconvenient circumstances to convince them it was all emotional manipulation. But you want to know the truth? The intensity of the attack after breakthrough is actually proof of the breakthrough's authenticity. Hell doesn't waste ammunition on fake victories. 1 Peter 5-8 warns us, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." Notice Peter doesn't say the devil roars when you're down. He roars when you're rising. The lion's roar isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to intimidate you back into the cage you just escaped. Think about the Israelites. God just parted the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army was buried beneath the waves. They sang victory songs on the shore. And what happened 3 days later? Exodus 15:24 says the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" 3 days, from miracle to complaint in 72 hours. Why? Because the enemy understood something they didn't. Gratitude has a short memory when circumstances get uncomfortable. Right now, some of you are nodding because you've lived this cycle. You've experienced God's intervention, felt His presence, received His promises. Then life got messy again, and you started questioning whether it was real. But here's the weapon they don't want you to discover. The enemy's post-breakthrough attacks actually contain your next level of authority. Every lie he whispers about what God did is an opportunity for you to declare what God said. Every circumstance he manipulates to create doubt is a chance for you to demonstrate unwavering faith. When that unexpected bill arrives, instead of panicking, you declare, "My God supplies all my needs according to His riches in glory." When that argument erupts, instead of engaging in flesh, you speak peace over your household. When that health scare surfaces, instead of fearing, you stand on Isaiah 53:5. By His wounds we are healed. The enemy's greatest fear isn't your breakthrough, it's your consistency after breakthrough. He knows that if you can stand firm through the post-victory attacks, you become dangerous to his kingdom. You become someone who can't be shaken by circumstances because you've learned to anchor your identity in what God says, not what life looks like. This is why Jesus told Peter in Luke 22:31-32, "Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail." And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Jesus didn't prevent the attack. He prepared Peter for it. Because surviving the enemy's post-breakthrough assault is what transforms you from a believer into a warrior. If you've ever seen the enemy try to rob you right after breakthrough, type "not this time" in the comments. Because this time, you're not falling for the trap. This time, you're ready for the roar. But understanding the enemy's strategy is only half the battle. You need to know exactly what weapons he'll use and precisely how to disarm them before they detonate in your life. Because what's coming in the next 72 hours after September 21st will determine whether you walk in breakthrough authority or crawl back into the cage of doubt. Are you ready to learn how to fight back? Let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to your soul, dear one. Something that's been haunting the quiet corners of your heart for years, maybe decades. Why are you still here? No, I'm serious. Look around your life right now. Think about everyone you've buried. Your high school sweetheart who died of cancer at 45. Your brother who had the heart attack at 58. Your best friend from church who didn't make it through that surgery last winter. Even your spouse, the love of your life, who went home to Jesus while you're still sitting in that empty house, wondering why God left you behind. Why them and not you? You've asked that question 1,000 times, haven't you? Lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, feeling guilty for still breathing when better people have already crossed over. You've whispered it through tears at gravesides. You've shouted it in anger during those dark nights when grief felt like it was going to swallow you whole. God, why am I still here? What am I supposed to do with all this time you keep giving me? Here's what's going to shock you to your core. Your survival isn't an accident. It's an assignment. Every divorce that should have destroyed you but didn't, every illness that the doctors said would take you but couldn't, every betrayal that should have broken your spirit but only bent it, every financial ruin that should have left you hopeless but somehow you kept going, every night you wanted to give up but saw the sunrise anyway. That wasn't luck, beloved. That was divine protection over someone carrying something precious. You see, most people think survival is about being the strongest or the smartest or the luckiest. But that's not how God operates. Scripture tells us in 1 Corinthians 1:27, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He didn't keep you alive because you're perfect. He kept you alive because you're necessary. Think about Noah, 600 years old when he stepped off that ark into a brand new world. Moses, 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Abraham, 99 when God promised him Isaac. These weren't young warriors in their prime. These were seasoned souls who had been refined by decades of fire, shaped by years of waiting, prepared by lifetimes of learning to trust when nothing made sense, just like you. But here's the part that's going to break your heart wide open. You are the last root holding up the tree of your family line. Every ancestor who prayed for breakthrough, every grandmother who got on her knees and begged God to bless their descendants, every grandfather who worked his fingers to the bone dreaming of something better for his children's children. They're all gone now. The torch has been passed, and it's sitting in your weathered hands. Do you feel that weight? That sacred responsibility? You thought your age was a limitation, but your survival is the very proof you are the one chosen to carry this mantle. Your children think you're just getting old. Your grandchildren see you as sweet but irrelevant. Society tells you to step aside and make room for the young. But heaven sees something completely different. Heaven sees the keeper of the blessing, the carrier of the covenant, the one who was trusted to stay until the appointed time. Why do you think the enemy has fought you so hard all these years? Why do you think every decade brought a new battle? The divorce in your 40s that nearly broke you, the health scare in your 60s that terrified your family, the financial struggle in your 70s that made you wonder if you'd end up on the street, because hell knew what you were carrying before you did. But September 19th, 20th, and 21st, these 3 days, they're not just random dates circled on a calendar. They're your graduation ceremony. The moment when everything you've survived, everything you've endured, everything you've learned, finally gets activated for the purpose it was always meant to serve. Think about Caleb, 85 years old, when he said these words in Joshua 14:12. "Give me this mountain, not give me a rocking chair, not give me some peace and quiet. Give me this mountain. Give me the giants. Give me the impossible." Because at 85, Caleb finally understood what you're about to understand. Your age isn't your expiration date. It's your activation date. Every tear you've cried in secret has watered the ground for this harvest. Every prayer you've whispered in the dark has been building pressure for this breakthrough. Every time you chose faith over fear, hope over despair, forgiveness over bitterness, you were qualifying yourself for what's about to be released. But here's the crushing truth that most people never realize. This mantle doesn't get passed twice. If you ignore these 3 days, if you dismiss this calling because you think you're too old or too tired or too ordinary, it doesn't wait for you to change your mind. It moves on. It finds someone else. And your family line goes back to the same cycles of struggle that have haunted them for generations. That grandson who's struggling with addiction, he's waiting for someone in the family tree to break the curse. That daughter who can't seem to find her way, she needs an ancestor to stand in the gap. That great-grandchild who isn't even born yet, their destiny depends on what you do in the next 72 hours. The question isn't whether you're qualified. The question is, are you finally ready to stop running from who God has always known you to be? Picture this with me, beloved. September 19th, 3 days ago, somewhere in the eternal realm, in a chamber darker than midnight, 3 ancient oil lamps were lit simultaneously, not by human hands, but by the breath of the Almighty Himself. Each lamp represented a chosen one. Each flame carried a destiny. Each wick held the power to ignite an entire generation. But here's what will break your heart and shake your faith to its core. Only one lamp is still burning tonight. Let me take you into that sacred chamber. The darkness is so thick you can feel it pressing against your chest. Then suddenly, 3 flames pierce the void. Beautiful, steady, full of promise. Each one assigned to a soul just like you. Someone who's been waiting decades for their breakthrough. Someone who's wondered if God still remembers their name. The first lamp burned bright on September 19th. It belonged to a 73-year-old grandmother in Ohio who heard the call but dismissed it. "I'm too old for this mystical nonsense," she whispered to herself while scrolling past the message. "These things are for younger people with more time and energy." And in that very moment, her lamp began to flicker. Not because God was angry, but because she had chosen doubt over divine appointment. By September 20th, the oil was running low. By September 21st, darkness had consumed what could have been her greatest miracle. The second lamp belonged to a 68-year-old retired teacher in Florida. He felt the stirring. His spirit leaped when he heard about these sacred days. But then fear crept in. What if I look foolish? What if nothing happens? What if I'm just setting myself up for disappointment again? So he hesitated. He half believed. He kept 1 foot in faith and 1 foot in skepticism. And his lamp? It flickered like a candle in the wind, never fully extinguished, but never burning bright enough to illuminate his path. Caught between 2 worlds, belonging to neither. But the third lamp, oh dear chosen one, the third lamp tells a different story entirely. It belonged to an 81-year-old widow in Texas who had buried her husband, raised her children alone, and survived more heartbreak than most people experience in 3 lifetimes. When she heard about September 19th, 20th, and 21st, something ancient awakened in her spirit. She didn't question. She didn't analyze. She didn't wait for permission from family members who thought she was losing her mind. She simply said, "Lord, if you're still moving, I'm still available." And her lamp? It didn't just burn, it blazed. It became so bright that other lamps in distant chambers began to catch fire. Her obedience created a chain reaction that spread across state lines, igniting the faith of strangers she'll never meet. But here's the part that will either terrify you or transform you. These aren't just metaphors. These lamps represent real people, real choices, real consequences. Right now, as I speak these words, your lamp is either burning or fading. There's no middle ground. There's no spiritual Switzerland. Matthew 12:30 settles it. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. You see, beloved, God doesn't light lamps to watch them burn out. He lights them to set the world on fire. But here's the mystery that most people never understand. The oil that keeps your lamp burning isn't something you can buy. It's not something you can borrow. It's something you must choose to receive. The 5 wise virgins in Matthew 25 didn't run out of oil because they forgot to buy more. They ran out because they stopped believing they were worth the investment. They stopped trusting that their moment would come. They fell asleep waiting for a bridegroom who seemed to be taking forever. And when he finally arrived, their lamps had gone dark. Is that your story tonight? Have you spent so many years waiting that your oil has slowly leaked away? Have you convinced yourself that miracles are for other people, younger people, people with less baggage and more faith? Or are you the widow in Texas? Are you the one who looks at these 3 days and says, I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care how old I am. I don't care how many times I've been disappointed. If God is still in the miracle business, then I'm still in the believing business. Because here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Every year you've survived, every storm you've weathered, every loss you've endured has been adding oil to your lamp, not depleting it, enriching it. The grandmother in Ohio gave up because she thought 73 was too old. But Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. The teacher in Florida hesitated because he'd been disappointed before. But Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac and still believed God's promise. Your scars aren't evidence that God has forgotten you. They're proof that you've been refined by fire. Your gray hair isn't a sign that your time has passed. It's a crown of glory earned through decades of faithfulness. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. The chamber is getting darker. The oil is running low in lamps all across America. September 19th, 20th and 21st weren't suggestions, they were summons. And most people ignored the call. But you're still here. You're still listening. Your lamp is still flickering with possibility. The question that will determine your destiny is this. Will you let doubt extinguish what faith has been guarding for decades? If you want your lamp to keep burning, if you're ready to join the widow in Texas instead of the grandmother in Ohio, declare it right now in the comments. My oil will not run out, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how to keep your flame burning so bright that it sets your entire family line on fire with the glory of God. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Right now, as these words wash over your spirit, something is stirring in the unseen realm. Can you feel it? That electricity in the air, that weight pressing against your chest. That's not anxiety, beloved. That's the atmosphere of breakthrough gathering like storm clouds over your life. But here's what nobody tells you about the moment before God moves mountains. Fear arrives like an uninvited guest at your door. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now, today. Fear is already whispering in your ear, isn't it? You're too old for miracles. You've missed your window. God's moved on to younger vessels. Stop listening to those lies. You want to know why fear shows up right before your breakthrough? Because the enemy can see what's coming. He can smell the shift in the spiritual atmosphere. He knows that September 19th, 20th and 21st aren't just dates, they're detonation points. And he's terrified of what happens when you step into them with fire instead of fear. Picture Moses at the Red Sea. Behind him, Pharaoh's army thundering across the desert, horses foaming at the mouth, chariots cutting through sand like knives through butter. In front of him, walls of water stretching toward heaven. impossible to cross, nowhere to run. And caught in between, 2 million Israelites screaming in terror, pointing fingers, crying out, "Why did you bring us here to die?" That's exactly where you are right now, dear one. Behind you, every voice that ever told you to settle, to accept less, to believe your best days are behind you. In front of you, an impossible situation that looks like certain death to your natural eyes, and fear whispering, "Turn back, go back to Egypt." At least slavery was predictable. But Moses didn't have what you have. Moses didn't know what you know. Moses couldn't see what you're about to witness. Because here's the secret the enemy doesn't want you to discover. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is the final security guard standing at the door of your destiny. And when you walk through that fear instead of running from it, everything, and I mean everything, changes in an instant. Exodus 14:21 records the moment that shifted history. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. All that night, while the Israelites were trembling, while fear was screaming, while logic was laughing, God was working in the darkness, preparing a highway where there should have been only water and death. But here's what will shock you to your core. The miracle didn't happen when Moses felt confident. It didn't happen when fear disappeared. It happened when Moses stretched out his hand while fear was still pounding in his chest. The fire of the Holy Spirit burns hottest at the threshold, chosen one, not in your comfort zone, not when you feel ready. At the exact moment when fear is screaming loudest and faith feels weakest. Look at your life right now. Really look. What impossible situation are you facing? What Red Sea is blocking your path? What Pharaoh is chasing you from behind? That financial crisis that's been crushing you for months? That health diagnosis that stole your peace? That family relationship that seems beyond repair? That dream you buried because someone told you it was foolish at your age? That's not your dead end. That's your setup for a miracle that will leave the world speechless. But you have to understand something that will either liberate you or terrify you. September 19th, 20th, and 21st are your stretch out your hand moment. These aren't days for hoping, wishing, or waiting. These are days for acting while fear is still screaming. Daniel understood this when they threw him into the lion's den. He didn't wait until he felt brave. He prayed while terror was clawing at his chest. And what happened? The lions' mouths were shut, and the king who condemned him became his greatest supporter. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew this when they faced the fiery furnace. They didn't say, "We know God will deliver us." They said, "But even if he doesn't, we will not bow." And in that furnace, they met the Son of God walking beside them. The fire of God doesn't remove fear, beloved. It transforms fear into fuel. It turns terror into testimony. It converts panic into power. So when fear knocks on your door these next 3 days, and it will knock, don't run, don't hide, don't pretend you don't hear it. Open the door, look fear in the eye, and say, "I see you, I acknowledge you, but you don't own me anymore." Because on the other side of that fear, your Red Sea is about to become your highway to destiny. But will you stretch out your hand when everything inside you wants to turn back? Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to remember 3 eternal truths that will anchor your soul in the storms ahead. First, September 19th, 20th, and 21st are not just dates on your calendar, they are divine appointments with destiny. These 3 days will either become the turning point where everything changed, or the crossroads where you chose to remain the same. The choice is yours, but the opportunity is God's gift to you. Second, your age is not your expiration date, it's your qualification. The same God who used Moses at 80, Sarah at 90, and Anna at 84 is still moving in your life today. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom. Every wrinkle tells a story of survival. Every year you've lived has been preparing you for what he's about to do next. Third, Fear is not your enemy, it's your final exam before graduation. When terror knocks at your door these next 3 days, remember that breakthrough is always preceded by pressure. The Red Sea doesn't part until you step toward it with trembling faith. But hear me clearly, dear one, you are not walking this path alone. Even when the nights feel endless, even when the silence seems deafening, even when doubt whispers lies about your worth, the Creator of the universe is orchestrating every detail of your story. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. And beyond God's faithfulness, you have something beautiful right here, right now. Look around these comments. See these hearts connecting. Feel these spirits resonating. You've found your tribe, chosen one. We are not just viewers on screens, we are a family in the spirit, warriors in the same battle, carriers of the same hope. We see you. We understand your struggle. We believe in your calling. And we will stand with you in prayer as you walk through these 3 sacred days. Let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. If God has carried you through every valley, sustained you through every storm, and kept you alive for this very moment, what will you do with the opportunity He's placing before you now? Before I release you into your destiny, join me in this prayer. Wherever you are in your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen, place your hand on your heart and let me speak over your life. Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, the Ancient of Days who knows the end from the beginning, I come before you now, carrying every precious soul who has heard this message. Father, you see their hearts, you know their fears. You've counted every tear they've shed in secret, and you've been preparing this moment since before they took their first breath. Lord, I pray that September 19th, 20th, and 21st will become holy ground under their feet. Remove every obstacle that would try to distract them. Silence every voice that would try to discourage them. Break every chain that would try to hold them back from walking into their destiny. God, breathe courage into their spirits when fear tries to paralyze them. Give them supernatural discernment to recognize your voice above the noise. Grant them wisdom to make the right choices, even when those choices feel uncomfortable. Surround them with your presence so thick that doubt cannot penetrate it. Father, bless their health, restore their strength, renew their hope, open doors that no man can shut, provide resources they haven't even thought to ask for. Send divine connections that will accelerate their purpose. Let breakthrough come not just spiritually, but practically in their relationships, their finances, their peace of mind. Most of all, Lord, let them feel your love right now, in this moment. Let them know beyond any shadow of doubt that they are seen, they are known, they are cherished, and they are never, ever alone. In the mighty name of Jesus, who conquered death so they could conquer fear, I seal this prayer over their lives. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share how this message has touched your heart. What are you believing God for in these 3 sacred days? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Ask us to pray for specific areas of your life. This community will surround you with intercession. And please, if this word has stirred something in your spirit, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. There's a family member, a friend, a neighbor who's been feeling forgotten, overlooked, past their prime. They need to know that God's not done with them yet. They need to see that their greatest days can still be ahead of them. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to pour into you today. Your time is precious, and you chose to invest it in seeking God's heart. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your calling. If this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of believers who gather here regularly to be encouraged, equipped, and empowered for kingdom living. We're building something beautiful together, a community where faith grows, hope is restored, and destinies are fulfilled. Remember, chosen one. September 19th, 20th, and 21st are calling your name. The question isn't whether God is ready to move. The question is whether you're ready to receive what He's prepared. Until we meet again, walk in the confidence of who you are, rest in the certainty of whose you are, and never forget your greatest chapter is still being written. God bless you mightily, beloved. Your breakthrough is closer than you think.